there everybody, it's Kelly with Kellyscards.ca, and this is the second card in my newest card kit series, the Everyday Card Kit number 5. For this card, I've decided to do something a little bit more vintagey and Paris-y. A lot of people really liked some of the cards with the scraps, so I've brought this idea back. So you're going to find a whole bunch of these paper strips in your kit. Take them all out, and what we're going to do is we're going to ink around all of the edges. And by doing this, when we layer them all together on the card, it's going to look really good. So that's the first part. What we're going to do, just ink up all the edges, and then once we get them all inked, we will place them down, and we can play around with where we think that they're gonna go. So there's a couple different strips. There's a couple of these ones in here, and then there's this embossed one, which I used a Tim Holtz embossing folder to get this print on this vintage paper. Just be gentle as you ink. Because of the embossing, the paper may not be as strong as it would be without the embossing, but I really like the texture by doing that, and I think that adds a lot to the card. So again, just keep going around. I really enjoy putting these cards together with these strips, because every time you make a card, you can make it completely different than the last time you made it. And we all know we have so many strips of paper and scraps left over, and this way you can really use it. And sometimes we have really nice paper and we use it till the last little bit of paper. And again, this is a technique you can use to use that paper up. So now I'll bring this in and we'll take a look. I think I'll have the embossed one on the top, and that looks pretty good. So now that I've inked up all the strips, you can kind of see that it's starting to look pretty cool. So to start adhering, I'm going to start at the top, and it's really important to get the first one really straight because all the other ones are going to follow. Now to help us get this straight, you can use a T-square like this just to help you put your strip on nice and straight. So we definitely want to have a little bit of play with this, so that's why I've used this tape runner adhesive and not something like score tape, so that I can just move it around to make sure it is movable. Now that I've got that first strip on there, I can keep adhering the rest. So the next is going to be the little piece that was embossed, and I'm going to nudge this right up nice and tight to the other piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, now that I've got those first two on there, I'm just going to lay the rest of them on here to make sure that we indeed still have enough room, because you don't want to get to the bottom and find that there is not enough room or too much room. If we layer them on here, we'll see that we're right about dead on getting this to be nice and even. So just always check that when you're doing something like this, just to make sure that you don't get all the way to the bottom and find that you're off by a little bit. So now we'll get that strip in there. I really love this paper. I only had so much of it left over, but it was a really neat kind of vintagey paper, and I find that these papers are really good for the Paris theme or anything mail. You can always use vintage paper for a mail card. So we're continuing to put the strips on here. Okay, that's on there, and again working towards the bottom. Like that, and our last piece. we go, that is all on there now, and it looks really great. And again, you can see why the inking looks so good. It just gives each piece a little bit of dimension, and again, that embossed paper really helps add interest already to this card. Now, if you have some strips that might be slightly longer than the other, you're welcome to just peel back a little bit and just take a little off the edge with your scissors. But I'm going to leave mine because I think it looks pretty good the way it is. And now we're going to bring in our image. Now, what I've cut is a piece of foam for you as well as the image. So before we adhere this down, I've just got my ink ready to add some of this distressed photo just around the edges, and this will help just make this image look a little bit better on this card. You can see the color differences coming in here with the lighter and darker, and I really like how that looks. And what we're going to do is we're going to attach the image to the foam. And I really like using these pieces of foam. I get them from Michael's, and I prefer using the big piece of foam when I have a big image like this, because when you use those small pop dots, you have to use quite a bit of them to really get good coverage on your piece. So this way you can just cut a piece of foam, either the exact same size, or in my case what I've done here is just a little bigger to give it some definition. So now I've got the adhesive off, and we're just going to put it right on, try to center it on this piece of foam. And again, I really like using the foam because it gives a bit of dimension, but yet this is solid, and I feel that this is a little better than some of the pop dots. Especially when you have squares or rectangles, it's so easy to cut this out of foam, and then you get that dimension. So this is going to lay on here. So now I've also cut you this key where I'm going to put it, or if you're going to add a sentiment to this card, feel free to move things around. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this nice and flat, and I'm going to have my key go across like this on the card. I'm not going to put a sentiment on this card. That way it can be open-ended for a card type that I might need. And I'm just going to use the score tape again on the foam. It's just a little bit thicker. If you have this type of adhesive, this will work as well. And we're just going to put some on the back here. Now that I've got that off, we can place it. And again, I'm going to go fairly straight here, and I'm going to try to center this right in the middle of this card. And before I start pressing it down, I'm just going to make sure it looks good. And now I'm going to press it down, and I'm going to have the key going over top. So for this key, I'm just going to put a little bit of adhesive in the middle here, because that's the part that's going to go over my image. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut some smaller size pop dots and add it to the key. If you have clear pop dots, they would work perfect in this instant because then you wouldn't see them. But I have some black pop dots which I have cut very, very thin, as you can see, and this is going to work perfect on this key. So I've just got my pop dots on there, 2 little ones there and a couple there, and I'm going to let it mostly sit on top of this matte area, and I'm just going to give it a little bit of a push down to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. So now, just to add a little bit more embellishment, I have picked out 3 sequins, and we're going to use the multi-matte medium. Again, any wet glue will work. And I'm just going to use my finger to pick this up and then just dab a little bit of this multi-medium, and then when I put it down, I'm just going to use my little tool here to help push it down like that. And for my next one, I'm going to pick it up as well. And now I can push that down as well with the tool. I find having one of these tools is just so helpful. There was the pick-me-up stick, and I had another one, and I found them very frustrating because they wouldn't let go of the item, so maybe the sequin or whatever. So I started just picking it up with my finger and then using my little tool here to apply some pressure once it's down. And then, as always, as always, what I like to do is just put an acrylic block on top of the sequence so that it applies some pressure onto those sequins to help it dry. For this little one on top, I'm just going to sneak this one in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this dry for a couple minutes, and then that way these sequins aren't going to fall off. So now I've come back and this has been on here for a few minutes, and now this is nice and dry. So lastly, we can just add our inside piece here to write on, and we're just using a little bit of craft paper which will go with the vintage theme. And we'll just get this into our card here. And there, that is perfect. So that finishes up the card. Really love this card, and just love adding little sequins as little extras on a card. Again, when you add things like this, you like to do it in odd numbers. It just is more appealing to the eye. And really love the decorative die here and this wonderful Paris image. And again, when we use our leftover scraps, look at how many useful ways we can make cards with just little scraps. Basically, your papers can kind of go on forever and you can use them right to the last little bit. So really love this card. This was a fun card to do and make, and I hope you enjoyed that. There are 4 cards still on the way in this card kit series, so I hope you'll tune in to that. I want to thank everybody for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.